Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda and this is my channel, Her Pacific Northwest Washington Life, and today I have for you my February wrap-up. So I read a couple of books this month. Not as many as I was hoping to get through, but quite a few of them were pretty chunky. So they took up a bit more time than I had originally anticipated them to, which is totally fine. The first book I have on my list is The Baron the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This was a reread for me, and I gave this book a 3-star rating. It was also a carryover from January, so I only had 275 pages left. It's 312 pages total, so not super chunky. But I enjoyed my reread of this. I revisited it again. I think it's been probably 3 years since I originally read this book. And I bought the last 2 books in the trilogy, so I would really like to finish out the Winter Night trilogy this year, so I needed to reread the story to be reminded of the events that had happened. I originally listened to this on audiobook, so it was nice to have the characters' names and the places in my mind already, because one thing I noticed is that when I try to read Russian-inspired works, I really trip over the pronunciation of words. So it was great to not have that bogging me down. I enjoyed reading it as a physical format this time just because I could commit things to memory a lot better. I retain quite a bit when I listen to audiobooks, but I always feel like, especially for fantasy books, I retain a lot more when I read them with my eyeballs. So it was nice to be able to do that with this, because there was quite a few events and things that happened within this that I had forgotten. It did take me a while to get through, so it was a bit, I don't know, the intrigue wasn't there a whole lot. And I think it's just because there's so much that needs to happen in order for the final events of the book to come into play. So that's why it's not, like, it's a book that I would recommend, but it's also not one that I would recommend to everyone. You kind of have to like that lyrical prose and the slow pacing to get to the climax of the story. So it was a good read. I'm glad I revisited it, and I'm really excited to see how the trilogy ends. The next book I have on my list was a buddy read with my friend Rainy over at Rainy Day Reads. We read The Hobbit together in January, so for the Lord of the Read-Along, there are 2 months that it's supposed to take to read The Fellowship of the Ring, but Rainy and I did it in 1 week, and this was a reread for both of us. I have actually just finished watching all the films again, rewatching them. We watched them with my son, and he really enjoyed those. So this story was still really fresh in my mind, and it was great to have just the scenery in the film in my mind to be able to picture things, but also be reminded of the small and big details that the film didn't pick up on this. I have read these all as a physical format, so this time around I am rereading them as an audiobook. So this was 19 hours and 7 minutes long, and I gave it a 4-star rating. I have found that Sam being my #1 favorite Hobbit of all time. He's the best one. You can argue with me on that, but he's the best. I found that I used to like Pippin over Merry more, but now I like Pippin a lot more than I like Merry a lot more than I like Pippin. Pippin's just really good for the comic relief, but Merry is actually kind of intelligent between the two little jokesters. But I loved visiting Rivendell again and relearning the story of Tom Bombadil and things like that. So really, really enjoyed this reread. Again, I don't think Lord of the Rings is for everybody, because J.R.R. Tolkien took so much time to craft the world that is Middle-earth. And if you don't like a lot of description and the kind of like See, I don't think these are slow paced, but a lot of people think they are. If you don't like that slow pace to get to where we are going, I don't think you would enjoy these. But they are definitely classic fantasy. And if you like that, if you haven't given them a try, I would definitely recommend them. But I'm quite biased and they hold a lot of nostalgia for me. So the next book I read was another audiobook, and this was After Ever Happy by Anna Todd. It was a 15-hour and 22-minute audiobook that received the lowest star rating from me for this month. It got a 1-star rating. I really dislike this book. These books are all very toxic. They just have very toxic relationships in them. A relationship in them. The main protagonist, male, is just incredibly emotionally abusive and just not a decent person. But the books are one of those like guilty pleasure reads, more or less. And I only had this book, and I've got one more left in this series, so I am planning on finishing it. But I am also quite aware that the relationship in it is very, very problematic. The thing that bothered me the most is that Hardin, like, aside from just being a jerk and pushing Tessa away as per usual, this time when he was trying to get her back, he kept throwing around that he would marry her because he knew that was something that she wanted. And he was very adamant about like not being married and stuff like that. And that just really bothered me because I am quite traditional in my views on marriage, and I don't think that marriage vows should be taken lightly. And it just was really annoying, maybe because I'm getting married in 2 months, to hear him just spout that off after they've been together like 9 months. I don't know. So I didn't enjoy this book as much as I have the previous books. But like I said, I have one book left in this series, so I am going to finish it out just to have it finished out, because I am a completionist, and we'll see how that one goes. The next book I have is Laundress by Brandon Sanderson. I also listened to this on audiobook. It was a 27-hour and 31-minute audiobook that I gave a 4-star rating. And like I was explaining earlier with the Baron the Nightingale, this one was definitely a book where I wish I had the hard copy at the time I was listening to this. I ordered this on Book Depository and didn't receive it until maybe like a week after I finished the book. But the names in this, there were a lot of names that had the same like Ray beginning. And so we actually have 3 main points of views. We've got Serene, Wraithen, and Readathon. And Wraithen is actually spelled HR. And had I known that, I would have been able to distinguish between Wraithen and Readathon a lot easier. But because of the audiobook narration, until I like really got to know each character, I was getting pretty confused with them. But I enjoyed this so much. I'm reading this as part of the Cosmere Read-Along that's being hosted by a couple booktubers. The first book to start with, or that they are starting with this year, is Laundress. And I've been wanting to get into Brandon Sanderson for some time now, but I didn't know where to start. And everyone's got their opinions on where you should start. And I was trying to do some research, but Brandon Sanderson doesn't even have like a set, you should start here with my books or anything. So when I saw the Cosmere Read-Along come up, I was like, that's perfect for me to finally get into his books. And I am so glad that I finally did. Like I said, we follow 3 main characters in the city of Erelon. And there is this city within that is called Elantris that housed these Elantrians, which were kind of like godlike people, but they were basically just able to wield magic. So they were put on a pedestal, and then 10 years ago, this thing happened that just completely shifted and kind of destroyed the magic and made it almost poisonous or toxic in a way. And so people started to shun the Elantrians and not care for them and things like that. So we have Serene, who is a princess of Teod, which was another city or land within this world, and she was on her way to marry Prince Raedan of Erlon, and he got hit with the Sheod. And so it's kind of their story of, I guess, how they try and fix Laundress. They unearth a lot of secrets within there, and there's like a lot of political things that are going on as well. So really, really enjoyed this book. It is a series. It's the first book in a series, but the second book doesn't have a title yet, and the release date hasn't been announced. But this one definitely feels like a standalone, and it reads like a standalone, so you could read it that way. But you can also see the potential for future books in this series. So I am really looking forward to whenever the next books come out and getting to those. But definitely glad that that was my first jump into Brandon Sanderson. The next book I have on my list is another buddy read. This is Graceling by Kristen Kishore, and I read it with my friend Eric over at Break Even Books. And this one is a 471 page book that I gave a 3-star rating. We follow Katza, who is this thing called a Graceling. She has a grace where she's just really good at killing. And she is used as her uncle, who is a king of the Midlands. She's used as his, not assassin, but she's basically his thug. So she, whenever people don't pay like they're supposed to, he sends her, and she kind of makes them pay and those sorts of things. This book has a really interesting concept, but Eric and I both agreed that it felt like not a lot happened. I mean, a lot did happen, but then it was just kind of so like anticlimactic that it just didn't feel like much happened. But I'm intrigued enough in this world and about the Graces to want to finish off. There's 3 books in this series. They're all kind of companion novels. The next one is Fire, and I think it takes place before Graceling. And then there's Bitter Blue, which follows one of the characters in Graceling. So it was interesting enough for me to want to continue on, but I'm hoping that her writing gets better, and instead of it feeling like nothing happens, I hope that things do, because a lot actually did happen. It just didn't feel that way, but we'll see how that goes. The next book I have is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I actually just finished this last night. I stayed up the entire night reading for like 5 or 6 hours. And it is a 720 page Kindle book that I gave a 3-star rating. Out of the trilogy that's out right now, this definitely was my least favorite of the 3. But I still really enjoyed just the world and the story as a whole. We follow Feyre and Race in this, as well as the other members of the Night Court, and them trying to take down the King of Hybern. And so it's just a continuation of the events that happen in the first and second books. There's a lot of like political things that happen within this, and just a lot of character development and things like that. I also felt like the characters would make a plan for how to defeat Hybern, and then I kept feeling like probably at least half of them didn't ever come to fruition, or would just like almost immediately, as soon as they put the plan into action, would be like ruined or foiled by the king. So it was really weird. I don't think the plot was very solid on this one. Or I guess the events that led up to, I don't know. It felt like a lot of filler that wasn't necessary, if I'm being honest. So it was all right, but I definitely am glad that I finally read the series, and it felt like a good like ending point for the original trilogy. But also, I feel like it does leave a lot of room open for I think there's 3 more books that are planned. And I don't know if they're going to follow our main characters in this original trilogy, or if we're going to follow some different people. So it does feel very complete, but also like you could jump into a whole more aspects of this world and stuff. So that's great. And then the last book I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about it in this wrap up, even though I'm not done with it, just because I am a fifth of the way through it. No, I'm more than I am 4/5 of the way through it. I only have like 10 hours left of a 45-hour, almost 46-hour audiobook. And this is An Echo in the Bone by Diana Gabaldon. The 7th book that she has published right now. This is a chunky one. That's where I am. We are following after the events of what's that one called? A Breath of Snow and Ashes. I kind of have to give spoilers for this, so if you don't want to hear and you don't really need to hear my stats, this is probably where you want to jump off. But being the 7th book in order to even begin to explain like my thoughts and feelings on this, I kind of have to tell you what has happened. So in this book, Roger and Brianna and the kids have gone back, not back in time, forward in time to what is it, like 1957-ish, and Claire and Jamie and Ian are still in North Carolina in the 1770s. So the families have been separated because they had to go back for Mandy's heart. But we're basically following Claire and Jamie and Ian as they try to make their way back to Scotland. The whole plot or driving factor behind it is the war that's taking place in America, as well as Jamie wanting to get back to get his printing press that he left in Edinburgh. And Bree and Roger have moved back to the family estate in Lallybroch, so in the Highlands and stuff. And I think between Roger and Claire, they found a way for basically a way to leave letters back in time for Bree and Roger to have and read now, so that they're being kept up to date on events that are happening. So naturally, as Claire and Jamie were trying to flee for Scotland, they got pulled straight into the Revolution, and not much is really happening with Bree and Roger, to be honest. So a big chunky book for all of that to happen. It'll be interesting to see how this ends. I assume that Claire and Jamie are going to make it back to Scotland, and I'm hoping, I don't know if it'll be by the end of this book or in the next book, that the families get back together, because I'd really like for Bree to be with her mom and dad again. I like Bree a lot better in the past than I do in the future, so we'll see how that goes. So this month I finished a total of 6 books, almost 7. I might have this done by tomorrow, we'll see. Let's see, we're gonna add up the stats together because I didn't do that. So average star rating, not including Outlander because we're not done with that. 3 plus 4 plus 1 plus 4 plus 3 plus 3 divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, it's a 3 exactly. My average star rating for the month is 3 on the dot. Pages read, we have 275 plus 471 plus 720. So almost as many pages as last month. I am down by about 150, but I read a total of 1,466 pages, and we're not gonna worry about hours read at this point just because, well, I guess we could do hours read. We've got a 19-hour book, a 15-hour book, a 27-hour book, and a 45-hour book. So I'm at 106 hours read for the month. A little bit more because of the minutes and things like that. But overall, not too bad. I'm hoping this continues into next month. March has 3 month-long readathons or reading challenges that I am participating in. Definitely hoping to drive down more of my TBRs that I have, both my physical, my Kindle TBR, and my Audible TBR. So we'll see how far I can get with that. But anyway, I would love to know how your reading month went for February. If we by chance read any of the same books, if you have read these books, do we have similar or differing thoughts? I would love to know, so please do chat with me down in the comments below, and I will speak with you there until my next video. Bye!